All right. Hey, everyone. So just give me a quick second. I just want to quickly share on all the things, the links to this, so people that don't know about it can join. All right. So welcome to CSS Breakpoint. It's been a while since we've done one of these. I think the last one that we did was Justin and I. Was it? I can't remember. I did one about like the has pseudo selector at some point. Yeah. Sorry. Like this time of year, I actually told Mike before we started. At this time of year, there's two things. There's two times you should never ask me like, "How's it going?" The first is like at the end of a workday. The other one is at the end of a year, because I'm always going to tell you everything is exploding and on fire and like everything's just out of control. All right. But what a better time to talk about some CSS hot takes. So the game master, Mike, has prepared the Wheel of Destiny. All right. And this wheel has what? 30 hot takes.
30 hot takes.
I am going into this completely blind. I have no idea what is in here. Okay. So I'm putting myself out there. This is a moment of radical vulnerability. I might like just like you would say in Afrikaans, my naam met 'n plank slaan. And no one would ever hire me again to do any CSS work. But that's the risk I'm willing to take. But let's see how it goes. I have no idea what these are. Yeah, and also just if you are joining, if you have any hot takes that you want our kind of take on, yeah, post them in the text chat, and I'll just pull them up here on the screen, and yeah, we can go. Also, just super quickly, these CSS Breakpoint sessions are sponsored by a company that I do work for on a contract basis. They've been kind enough to actually say, we actually want to contribute to FETSA. We like what you guys are doing, and we want to help you keep the lights on, and just pay for the operational stuff. And what can we figure out so that we can give you money? And so we said, like, hey, let's just do this CSS Breakpoint thing. And then you can just be the sole sponsor. Yeah. So I should probably also say who that is. So that's a company called. It's Mike. You just don't know it yet. No, it's a company called Pattern. So they do a bit of work in the kind of retail ERP space in South Africa. So kind of they build platforms and stuff that some of the fashion retailers like Woolworths and Cape Union Mart and so forth uses. A lot of data science people on the team as well, so a lot of like machine learning stuff when it comes to like calculating like how you should distribute your stock and anticipating like changes in stock and where does the blue t-shirts need to go and whatever. Yeah, so check them out. I think they're always hiring as well, if you're possibly looking for a job, so just check it out. I think it's just patternretail.com. Yeah. So yeah, there we go. All right. So Mike, is there anything you want to mention or say before we do the spinning?
There's one question. Like I think I'm gonna cheat and pick my kick us off with something that I am possibly guilty of, right? Based on this hot take.
Okay.
So one of these here is. No, not that one. Using margin auto is an anti-pattern. Everything should be explicitly controlled.
I've seen this one. It's a bit of an older one, because I do think I remember seeing it like a couple of years back, and I also think I would also say it's a bit of an older one is I think so when we're saying margin auto, 90% of the time what we're doing is we're centering something. So we're applying margin auto on left and right, and that kind of centers it. But I do think we have a lot of stuff like Flexbox and whatever since. So I actually think the need for that has reduced a bit. But I'm guilty as charged. I used margin zero auto like probably a day or two ago. So
I reach for it so damn often.
Yeah.
Because if I need something, like if I'm in a Flexbox and I want to push something to the side, I'm generally They're so lazy that throwing a margin right auto shifts it across, and then I don't need to think about anything else.
Yeah. So let me say why I think someone would say this is an anti-pattern, and then you can give the underlying reasoning, and let's see how kind of far off or close I am. So I would assume that, when you think about like kind of encapsulation and separation of concerns, or whatever, then you, by definition, setting margin auto, you are making decisions about the layout outside of something. And you're applying styling to the things, which is also why I tend to just use padding in general. And another reason is also just margins do the weird thing where they collapse and whatever.
If you're in a fixed
So
box or not.
yeah. So I just generally across the board prefer padding over margins because the behavior is more predictable. But my guess would be it has to do with encapsulation and that your element should not influence things outside of it. You should rather use the parent to actually control where that thing is positioned.
But so I don't have reasons for these hot takes. We're gonna
Oh wait,
have to
where
figure
did
them
you
out.
get? Is this a ChatGPT special?
It is a Claude special because Claude is way better.
Oh,
than
Claude.
ChatGPT.
Hey, sure. Yeah. Okay. Well,
I could ask Claude for why this has been included there, but like the point that you touched on is I think a not hot take because if you're designing a component, you shouldn't be defining anything that's outside of the component or how it interacts with the rest of the layout. So yeah, I don't know about that one, but either way, if anyone comes to me with dogma about not using margin auto, like I can't see a world without it.
There you go. Yeah. So I think my approach would be that you can solve, I guess, it in more quote unquote correct ways by, like as I mentioned, separating the concerns that the parent controls where the thing is, which is like also why on Flexbox you set it on the parent and not the element itself, because that adheres to this principle of if you do a little widget, that widget should have no say over where in the layout it's going to go. And if you do margin auto, then by definition it's going to actually, cool. There is a quick question by Andisa. How about using margin top auto to make a footer stick to the bottom of the page? Would you recommend a different way? So I would assume when you say a footer stick to the bottom of the page, you're not necessarily implying like it floating, so not fixed, like bottom fixed, but you're talking about this case that I see all the time that is where if there's not enough content on the page, then the footer like renders in the middle of your screen. Do you know what I'm talking about, Mike?
Yeah, but like I generally approach it with a min height.
Yeah, I tend to do the same as well, and I tend to have my like kind of my layout, my highest level layout thing. I give it like 100 VH or whatever, and then as you said, min height, and then I generally have like my header and my footer, and then the actual content thing itself I flex grow, so that it's always going to expand to push it down. So I think, I guess there's nothing wrong with doing that, Mandisa, but I think there's actually way better ways. I think in general, probably all the cases that you mentioned, Mike, is like cases where you're just too lazy to do it with Flexbox or whatever. That's definitely for me the case whenever I use margin auto. It's just I'm just like, I'm not going to create there's already 5 million divs. I'm not going to create another div that styles, and that's so it's technically wrong, but like also
I mean, so like my case is the case specifically that I've reached for this a lot is if we've got like a drawer and we want, let's say, a group of things at the bottom and a group of things at the top. I often just throw a margin bottom there, or like margin bottom of auto on like the last member, and I don't have to worry about having a bunch of nested things.
Yeah.
Um,
So I can see how this can be a hot take if you are like trying to be technically correct. It
yeah.
is the worst. It's a worse way from a program from a thinking about what you're actually doing. It is a worse way to do the thing. It's less. Let me put it this way: it's less idiomatic. There's the word.
There are also trade-offs to either way that you do
Exactly.
it.
Yeah,
So
I mean, like it's the exact same reason why when I'm debugging, I just do console log 1, 2, 3, 4 to see if the thing fires, and I don't go like do breakpoint steps or whatever. It's like sometimes you just want to get the job done.
using
I do.
Breakpoint is a big hammer. Like
Yes. Yeah. I see Sean asked, why not use Flexbox with space between? Sure, you can do that. I think the specific case that I was thinking about is where you would have like some type of sidebar or something as well, like a side element. So you probably also don't want that to just like float in the middle of the screen. You want that to kind of also stretch from the header to the footer. But yeah, like I think in general, I would just use Flexbox to solve that problem. Yeah. All right. Let's
get
go.
a hot take.
Hot take. Let's go. Oh, the music. Party time. Okay, 12.
That is impressive. I didn't test this before.
Oh, no, you manually doing a lookup.
Yes.
You're
Because
just getting the
I can't spoil it. Actually, I'll paste them in the chat as well.
Yes, and then I can throw it on the screen.
Okay, I'm just going to put it in the private chat, and you can.
I wonder if I can put that on the screen. Let me see. No.
Otherwise, I can jump onto the YouTube video. Comment it for myself.
Just mute it, and I'll throw it on the screen. Otherwise, you're going to hear yourself talk.
Cool, I'm on it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Hold on. In the chat, I'm in. Okay. If anyone sees my oh no, thank goodness it's not here.
No, you're not sharing that screen.
No, I split it off as an individual window, so I didn't have to worry about these things.
Yeah. We've had people do talks before and they go into like their Gmail and whatever, and I'm like, bro. Dude, if it's too much hassle, don't worry about it.
Okay, let's. We can start talking about it while I do it. Okay, so CSS variables are just a less powerful version of Sass variables.
I don't think that's a hot take. That's just objectively wrong, and I can say why.
I will add my own hot take to this one. Sass is not relevant in 2024.
Oh Jesus. I can say that Sass is not relevant for me and the stuff that I work on. But just got called out. I'm too scared to make absolute statements are absolutely problematic. There you go. Which is an absolute statement about absolute statements. So yeah, I wouldn't go that far. To me, yeah, I don't use Sass anymore. I used to use it all the time. There you go. All right. So I'm curious to hear your take here. Like, I would say this is not a hot take. I'd say this is just objectively wrong. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts first. I'd say it's the other way around, but yeah.
I'd actually say that Sass variables are a little bit more powerful because you can iterate with them. That's the extent of my knowledge around Sass stuff. I've used it to like define some constants, and I think I did like some string interpolation with it, which was pretty neat. And in the actually, sorry, I say Sass. I was using SCSS at the time.
That's kind of when people say Sass, no one uses Ruby Sass anymore. Yeah.
It was pretty convenient for defining like breakpoints, and we had a bunch of mix-ins and some weird stuff happening, but it did made the overall ergonomics a whole bunch easier because we were integrating with Vuetify, way back when. And yeah, like I was actually quite impressed with them. The biggest thing for me at this point, though, is like my common stance around CSS stuff is like, is it supported? Because the project that I've been working on for the last 2 years needs so much support. Like I can't use FlexGap. There are so many things that I can't reach for, and having some sort of CSS preprocessor would mitigate a lot of those challenges.
Yeah. So basically, I think Sean kind of nailed it. So to me, the big thing is that SAS variables do interpolation. In other words, they literally just do a regex replace before you create the file. So it loops over all, it looks for that. It's like template. It's basically templating, and it just interpolates. It just pastes the string in there. Whereas, and which is also why I actually personally try and move away from calling it variables, because I do think that's also part of the problem. So the official name is custom properties. Like those are runtime based. So what that actually means is that you're setting up a chain of reactivity. So you can actually set up things. So in other words, that means like you can say that, base these like so things like dark mode and light mode, is very easy to do because you don't have separate CSS selectors or whatever. You just have a custom property that your CSS listens to, and then when it updates, it just like sucks it in and it reads it almost like state or observers or whatever. And the big win is that because of that, they are like media query like dependent. So you can override them, you can change them at specific media queries. Things like reduced motion, anything that can be expressed in an at query, at supports.
Yeah.
So you can define them, like, so here's a good example, so you can say, you can have different conditions based on whether a specific CSS property is supported or not.
You can have Mac specific styling.
Yeah, and you just wrap a reassignment. So if you think about it, at query is effectively just an if statement. And you just in that at query, you just reassign the variable. Another thing as well is like you can have them scoped. So you can scope them to like custom properties and stuff. So for example, let's say I create a web component that is like, I don't know, crazy thing, whatever. And I want you to be able to change there's a blue version of it, or I can pass a custom variable to that, or like a custom property to that, and it uses it and it kind of infers from that.
Right, it ingests.
Yes. So if you think about like, so in terms of even theming and whatever, like it's just way more powerful. And I think also in terms of where CSS is moving at the moment, like I really hope there's a hot take here that is like around like where the CSS is too hard or too easy or something, because I have some big brain thoughts on that. But CSS is moving in a direction where you're going to get stuff that looks more like functions, where you pass something to, you have the little bracket stuff. And there's already some stuff there for custom properties where you can set fallbacks, and you can do stuff. You can do like kind of inference or computed stuff based on it.
We've done a bunch of that to support Apple stuff.
Yeah. But like, so in terms of the product that you mentioned, I know exactly what that is. And I see that you guys deprecated something recently that I complained about a lot. And now it's causing a lot of trouble for one of the companies that I work at, because now they need to replace this old school legacy thing that they had. And rightfully so, but now I'm scared it's because I complained so much about that. But yeah.
We deprecated it in January.
Yeah. Well,
yeah. So hopefully they ask you to deprecate on
it's
your
more
side.
money. It's more money for me. I should just get you guys to change the API all the time, and then people have to pay me to update it.
The old one is we've improved on the old one so much. The new one's Preact and super cool. It'll be worth the exercise. And also, if they have issues with updating it, i.e., they need some custom functionality that doesn't already exist, they should maybe reach out to us because we'd be willing to hear that. But in any case, onto the hot take topics. We're going to check the next one.
Okay, what is this?
29. We have got using pixel for font size is more accessible than using rems.
I would have said at a previous point that I think it's like, if you asked me a couple of years ago, I would have said that a lot of the reasoning around rem and pixels are outdated because it's using virtual pixels now, not actual real pixels. But I do use rem just because I prefer working in bigger units and not getting down into like, is it 14.2 or is it 16 or is it? I just like being like, it's 1, 2, 2.5, 5. I just like working in bigger units. But Xandor has actually changed my mind on this a couple of years ago, where he actually showed me a case where using rems over pixels is still preferable. I'm curious what your take is on this.
I'm actually on board with this.
Okay.
I've worked with a proprietary font. It wasn't a web font. And at float values, it rendered terribly. It was so bad. And before I joined the team, they were using responsive font sizes, whatever. And it just it looked so bad. And moving over to statically defined fonts, but picking between the different sizes was orders of magnitude more legible.
So like, and I think that's also another thing to mention is that because one rem is kind of 16 pixels, it's the default. So as a general point of view, you're already working from kind of almost like a baseline. One thing that I do find with my design students is, as a rule, when they just start out in their first year, everything is just way too big. Like the buttons, I literally had a student and he probably wouldn't mind me calling him out because he's a really strong student, but like, it's also just like that kind of experience of designing interfaces and whatever. Like, I think his buttons were like 150 pixels or something. So and I think it's just like the thing there is that generally what happens is, because you look at your design zoomed out, because you have all this UI and tools and everything around it, and you move around between your canvases and zoom in, zoom out, so you're usually looking from far away, so you don't realize that if you actually put your canvas at 100%, that's what it's going to look like. So I think just using rems, it's just easier to reason about proportional sizing, because then you can be like, okay, cool. Then you were saying that, sorry, I just got a message and I kind of started mixing up the message with what I'm talking to you now, like pop-up messages. So the thing is, like, it's easier to reason about, like, hey, is this double the base font, or this is 3 times it, or this is like 6 magnitudes bigger than your default paragraph body text, or this is half of it, or whatever. I think it's just easier to reason about it that way than to be like, it's 32, it's 64, it's so yeah, I think just like, to me, which is also why I always encourage designers to also use rem, because
except working with 0.625, 0.7, whatever is
But if you do that, but then if you do that, like, you have a bigger problem. Like, then you're doing like, do you mean like when something is like, oh, it's 50 pixels, but
No, if we've got a 12 pixel font, what's that in
yeah.
rem?
Oh yeah, but like that, but I think like that is that's the case if you start thinking in pixels and then like change it to rem after the fact. So I don't need to know what that is. I just need to know how big is it in relation to the default body font size. Yeah.
And I think that's the exact issue that I experienced. If people weren't using integer values for fonts, then they broke. But granted, not applicable to web fonts. Most modern fonts, it's not a thing. But if you are working with like proprietary stuff, it can be an issue.
So let me quickly summarize why I would have initially said. So Sean also asked, what do we mean by accessible? So I would say that when we say accessible, what we mean is that the layout is least likely to break, even in edge cases, depending on which one. So, like, would the layout break more often when you're using pixels, or would it break more often when you're using rem?
I'll also include legibility in there for me, because it's genuinely a thing.
Yeah. Okay. But I'm specifically talking about like because to me that's the more extreme one.
Yeah.
And so first and foremost, I would have said a couple of years ago, it doesn't really matter, because I would have said a lot of the thinking around rem and whatever comes from a time where when you said 3 pixels, it was physically 3 pixels on your screen.
Yeah.
So what that meant is that if you zoom in and out, 3 pixels is no so by definition, if you're zooming in and out, like, if it's 3 pixels, then things are going to break. It needs to scale according with how you're zooming in and out. But obviously, browsers after a while realize this, especially with Retina and all those things, where you have different. And I think a lot of it also, like, that comes from a period where your screens were always 72 pixels per inch, always across the board for a very long time. But then eventually, what browsers did is they changed that to be virtual pixels. So it would infer it based on at 100% zoom. So at 100% zoom, what would that be? And it would do the calculation if you zoom in and out and whatever. So things would no longer break. It would adjust everything accordingly. But there are still some edge cases where it would still break. Because, okay, so for those of you that don't know, rem effectively means root. What is it? Root element?
Yeah.
I
can't remember if it's root or on the body.
Root,
relative element, maybe.
Okay, there you go. Root. I think it's someone's
root element. Yeah.
Root element measurement. I think. So effectively, it's what your default font size is. So if you just put text in your browser, no CSS, no nothing, I literally just open my browser and I do a p tag and I start typing hello world. What is the size of that text going to be? So then when you're using rem, you're actually setting your sizes based on that. Okay. So that means like everything is in relation to your body copy. Like, so a heading is X amount is 2 rem, so it's double the size of that and so forth. Where it still is a problem in this day and age is if someone sets their font independently on their operating system. So if I go in my operating system and I say that, or I use a plugin, or I use, for example, some Chrome extension because I have bad sight or whatever to increase the font size, then that kind of like no longer applies. So then obviously my font is a different size, but I'm still working within a realm of pixels. So then you start seeing mismatches where, the size of stuff don't match the text and whatever. Let me put a hot take, throw you back a hot take. I don't think everything should be rem. I don't think all measurements should be rem.
Which substantiate your claim.
Okay, so I would say I would do fonts as rem. I would do things like padding, margins as rems, width, height, rem. Borders and border radius I would do as pixels.
Yeah, I actually largely like when I'm using rems, I'm using rems relative to pixels.
Yeah.
And the reason for that largely is that on super huge displays, I can just bump from 16 pixels per rem to 20 pixels per rem. Besides that, it doesn't really make a difference to my workflow.
Yeah. So the reason why I would still use pixels for border and I would still use it for border radius is because those to me should be independent of what size the font is. So if you're like if you go you're bad sighted or whatever and you increase the font size, obviously your padding and everything should adjust accordingly. But yes, but obviously your borders shouldn't get thicker.
Yeah.
And the amount of rounding on the corners of your borders. So everything that's going to change if you decrease or increase the font size on your operating system, I would do those as rem. I would keep everything else pixel.
Okay, that makes sense. That's not even a hot take. That's rational.
Yeah, and also like if you do that, like now, like because you know your borders are then going to end up because your borders are usually such small values, you're going to be like 0.000189 rem or whatever. That's also just a pain. All right. Yeah.
Yeah. Next hot take.
Yes.
I've muted the lovely audio, so.
God, it gets the people going.
Okay, 16.
Oh, I know that effect. That is JS confetti.
No,
no. Yeah, no. When it finishes
this one.
Oh, but I just want to say when you finish spinning and it does that little. I've seen that. I've seen that so much. It's a very specific JavaScript library.
Okay.
Whew. Agreed. Like, yeah. I don't have like I can say why I think so, but yeah, agreed. Because like the cascade is something that was effectively created for documents, and it makes sense in documents. I would say the cascade is similar to inheritance. So inheritance is cool and whatever, but like you want to, as far as possible, when you're working at a specific scale, have as much magic happening under the hoods where things just teleport around. You want to be able to follow that trail. You want to be able to control click, see where is this thing coming from. So cascade is cool if you're doing documents and you want to say all H1s, all H2s, or whatever. But yeah, I agree. I agree with this.
I had someone argue that the cascade in BEM was the way to write maintainable CSS.
Sorry, like, go ahead.
That to me, that just sounds like someone that doesn't have experience.
Where does BEM fit into this? What did I miss here?
No. Like I'm saying someone made the statement to me.
Yeah.
That using the cascade and using BEM, that solves maintainability issues.
Well, so BEM would actually, BEM actually would allow you to actually like get rid of the cascade because like you're actually doing the thing where there's a one-to-one map in terms of specificity between things. But yeah, I mean, like, so even if one were to disagree with this statement, the fact that CSS modules and those things exist probably means that the community at large does think this, because there's a lot of tooling. We're also getting scope now. Sean says imperative programmers love this argument. Yeah, I think like you get a specific. Let me put it this way: there's a specific type of person, and I tend to find them a lot of like the old guard of kind of like software and so forth. That is like there's nothing wrong with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These are perfect technologies. I don't know why people want to use libraries. This React schmack nonsense, get out of here. You can just use plain JavaScript, and like like I like even back in the day, Douglas Crockford, like in his JavaScript The Good Parts, said that in order for him to write that book, he needs to pretend like the DOM doesn't exist. Because there's no way to write a book about JavaScript The Good Parts and actually include the DOM in talking about the good parts about JavaScript. But I think it's the same with CSS as well. Like I think just like factually, CSS was created for a different reason that it's being used today. So yeah, it's backwards compatibility, man. Like it's you have to work around it. But yeah, there are things being added now. Like we have layers is a great one. Layers, CSS layers helps you to just like fire extinguish that cascade and be like, stop this nonsense. And at scope as well. So there's a lot of cool stuff coming to CSS at the moment, which a very naive approach might be the same with the custom properties and variables, where it's like, oh, it's just CSS modules, but now inside CSS. And no, it's actually way more powerful, because if you do it in the runtime, it actually opens up a lot of stuff and options for you that you didn't have previously, when you just compiled your CSS to some type of modularized thing. But yeah, no, I would agree with that. Yeah.
Okay, next hot take. Give me 1 second. Go. Wait, why is it not going?
Like these are some. I'm not gonna lie. And Mike, these are some lukewarm takes. I was hoping for stuff like everyone should go back and use Bootstrap again, or stuff like that. I'm going to be very disappointed if there's nothing in here about Tailwind, and if there's nothing in here about like CSS and JS, like those two. They're lurking in there somewhere. I'm going to be very disappointed.
Multiple times. Okay, so this one's not a very hot take, and this is one that I actually considered deleting before we
let's veto it. But just give it, and then we can move on. Yeah.
CSS animation should be disabled at default and progressively enhanced.
Yeah. I mean, like anyone with what's it, vestibular disorder, or what do you call it? So there's a condition where it's to do with your ear, where you get vertigo from things moving. Like, anyone who's like, I disagree with that, is like, sucks to have that condition. Like you're just gonna have vertigo using the web, like constantly. But yeah,
by that rationale, then you should just write all your animations with a outside of the scope of. Can you have prefers reduced motion off?
Yes.
So then all animations should just be scoped within prefers reduced motion.
So I think what I'm getting at here is, okay, so when you say progressive enhancement, like that's a range of things, like I would take the broadest possible answer to that, which would be like all the way from the design. Like when you're thinking about design and you're in Figma and you're using animation to communicate things to a user. So let's say, as an example, a common one is if you click a submit button and there's something wrong with the input, it kind of like jumps, or it does like a little vibration to indicate like burp, wrong, or whatever. That should be, from a design perspective, that should be an enhancement. So that shouldn't be the sole way that you communicate it. So you should show an error that says what, like, you can't proceed or whatever, and then have that enhancement, that animation, just further communicate the point, further indicate that, like stop.
Okay, next one. not doing the audio because my heart
Oh,
can't take it.
sorry. Just quickly, I just want to close that up. So when I say I agree with that, is that I do think, like, as you mentioned, prefer reduced motion. It is so trivial to just like wipe all your animations. It's literally you can put it in a custom property that you just wipe where all your animations get read from. And like there's another one where you just use a universal selector and you just say if prefers reduced motion is on, override all animation name to none, like the little asterisk across your app. But the problem is obviously then like animation shouldn't be something that's being used in the design as the core way to communicate something.
That will break Material UI.
Maybe. I don't know.
At least last time I used it, that would definitely break all, like a lot of input fields where they have the little label moving. Yeah, fun and games. I
haven't even thought about that. Yeah, that's a good
I have
point.
positive feelings about that. So, in any case,
but sorry, like just I'm gonna go tangent here quickly. But wouldn't it still change? It would just not animate. It would just not like. It was just like
setting the animation name. Oh wait, yeah, because the animation.
That's a transition,
right? Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. I do have really bad time experience with those animations. And granted, I didn't know how Material UI worked at the time. Okay, our next hot take is CSS nesting is just going to create the same specificity problems we had in the SAS days.
Okay, so I would say the underlying hot take here would be that we shouldn't add nesting. So we have nesting now as a native feature. And well, like you can more easily do nesting now than you used to be able to. So I would assume the hot take is that's a bad idea.
I mean, I'm definitely on the nesting side. Very fond of nesting. I've always used Post CSS to nest for me.
Okay. And when you say nesting, you mean if you do that @ thing and then you put it all inside the block, and it all makes it like, I'm more of a BEM guy, so I actually don't like that. Yeah.
How dare you?
Yeah.
We've got two hot takes here, and we finally butted heads. I think BEM's obsolete, and I think nesting is the way.
Oh, yeah. Well, like, I don't use BEM nowadays because, like, there's better things like CSS modules and, dare I say, CSS and JS and whatever. But to me, so take me through what you mean by nesting. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same thing.
So yes, I might make my name complete ass now because I haven't written CSS in so long.
But just shows how good you are with Go, huh?
No, I've been largely doing back-end and DevOps for the last year.
Yeah.
The last time I touched front end today, but the last time I really touched front end was like in January. So give me 1 second. I'm going to pull up my docs that I usually use. CSS nesting, and let me just make sure. So yeah, you'd be able to attach.
Should I share my screen
within selectors? No, I'm just making sure that I'm not talking nonsense here. So you can have it's the and syntax. So it's I'm guessing that the native CSS follows something similar.
But it's super gross in the native one, like just the syntax. But maybe it's just muscle memory because I'm so used to how you did it in SAS that it's just annoying. Yeah.
And that essentially gets or your specificity of the nested selector gains the specificity of the parent selector. I'm guessing
No,
the native one works the same way.
no. So specificity is determined by how much nesting there is. So the more nesting you add, the more specificity you get.
So it ignores your selector specificity comparatively.
Well, like no. So well, I guess it combines them. So if you have two selectors and you let me share my screen just to ensure we're talking about the same thing. So okay. Do you see this?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, you now let me just see. CSS allows you, yeah, CSS nesting module allows you to write style sheets so they're easy to read. So previously, you would have to write each of these. So you're able to compose selectors now, like from nesting. Okay, so previously you'd have to write this entire selector, and then like each of these individually. But so, for example, this is what you would have to do previously. So you write the selector and then write the next selector. But what you can now do is by using indentation, you can like actually have it create a selector for you. So you can compose your levels of nesting to create like these kind of chained selectors. And so this, when you say so like I would say the hot take, and I would agree with the hot take, I don't think they should have added this to CSS.
This is something that I use quite frequently.
Okay.
If I am defining variants of a thing, if we're looking at buttons as our most simple example, all of a sudden you can encapsulate everything within the parent selector.
Yes, but it comes with a cost.
That
cost is specificity. So to show you a quick example, let me just spin up CodePen super quickly. So if we go, all right, so I'm going to try and do this now because I don't actually write CSS in this way, so just bear with me. So let's say we have a div. Well, I'm going to use pug just because. Okay, so let's say we have a card, and in that card we have let's say a title, and all of this is not just going to be divs, but I just want to prove the point. And then we have like a description, and we have a clickable button. So let's say let's just say call button. Okay, and this is just, I'm just going to make these divs for now, button, and let's just do lorem ipsum, and title is hello world. Okay, and you have like a blue card, and a red card. So I assume this is how you would then use your CSS, right? If you want to have like variants, and a green card or whatever, right? And let's say what that does, depending on what card you have. Let me try this out here. So you would do card, and let's just say inside card you have button. And button is I don't know, let's go background gray. But then you have running out of space. Is this actually supported? Oh, it's a dot button. Does it? Okay, cool. And then obviously you have let me think about this quickly. So you have button, but then you also have a version where it's like card dot red or whatever, and then you have like card dot blue, whatever. Okay, and then so depending on what you set the depending on if you apply like some type of modifier or whatever, it would. Why is this one not probably missing something? Oh, I don't even have red. It's what is it? Green. Sorry. Okay. So, okay. The problem here now is that what did I mess up now again? Oh, I keep on actually. Okay, should be red. Okay. The problem here is that this is going to start, interfering with your actual, pseudo selectors and stuff. Big pseudo states and pseudo elements and stuff and pseudo selectors, because those have their own specificity. So if I now go card button and then I go, I think you can then do hover and you do, or let's say active. Yeah, let's go hover. I think you can do this. Once again, I don't write my CSS like this, so I wouldn't know. Zoom out a little bit. Okay. So check this out. All right. So now, let's also just do color white. That hover effect is not getting applied because the specificity of that background color overrides it.
Right.
So you can't keep the pseudo. So it's going to override your pseudo elements. And then what you can do is, like, the only way to do that is to actually do important. And like then it's just like cheers. Then it's GG once you start doing like important. So to me, the idea of how you say, like the idea that the selector itself determines the order that the priority that rules should take is problematic in itself, because sometimes that doesn't make sense. So in this case, I just want to override the actual. I don't want to override. I still want the black hover effect.
Yeah.
I just want to actually change the base. Yeah, and the only way to do that, if you're using specificity, is to actually then go either use important or manually like re-add it again afterwards to all of these.
Yeah.
I'll share this code pen in the comments as well for anyone who wants to check this out. Although CSS layers do allow you to actually fix this issue. And you'll actually see this a lot in like older UIs and stuff like Bootstrap, where Bootstrap also does this type of thing. So if you want to sometimes override the Bootstrap styles, you have to use importance and stuff.
Yeah.
None of the new frameworks do that. But yeah, and it's for this reason. It's because like you're now actually mixing two different things.
Yeah.
So what you actually want is you actually want scope. You actually want to be able to scope this to that version of the card and that version of the card. But now you're mixing up the way in which you indicate what you want with the way you indicate that influencing what is going to get applied. Yeah, I personally, this, I don't think it's wrong per se. I think I resonate with the idea that I think it's you're setting yourself up for a lot of edge cases that that's going to be that you're going to have to solve in some gross ways. Whereas, and I think I guess this comes to trade-off, because like in something like BIM, you wouldn't have that.
Yeah. But also, like, I wouldn't expect, like, taking this example,
yes.
like it's a bit of a trivial example, right? Because your hover state is going to be dictated by your variant.
Yes.
In almost all cases.
Well, sure. if you if you want your hover state to get influenced by it, but maybe you want it to be, you want it to be black regardless.
Yeah,
So
but like,
yeah.
is that a common pattern?
So you tell me. Like that's the thing. So
I've never been in that
yeah.
situation.
So to me, like just having that be an option to
Mhm.
me is worth actually. And we're talking about scale here, So
Mhm.
it's the exact same thing. That sure you can work around this and you can put safeguards to prevent this.
Yeah.
But once you get to the scale of like massive and massive and massive amounts of CSS, if I were to just look at that,
Mhm.
oops, I wouldn't be able to see why is my hover not applying. So I guess it's a matter of principle, and you might
Yeah.
feel that writing BEM is not worth it for you to avoid that.
Mhm.
And I think for me, I just feel, well, I'm not writing BEM anymore. Like
Yeah.
using this argument, like
Mhm.
let's say 5 years ago. Now we just use CSS modules or whatever. Don't do that. But to me, like the trade-offs, like so BEM has trade-offs, and it's just it
Yeah.
looks but ugly.
Mhm.
But to me, that's fine. Like to
Yeah.
know that when I
It is not
change,
shallow. Yeah.
when I change all my CSS selectors are 1-to-1. So if there's only one instance of it, and when I change that, it's going to work.
Yeah.
There's nothing that's going to be able to override it. So yeah.
Yeah, this
Okay.
goes back to the thing of when you have many people working on a code base. I've seen selectors reaching in from the wrong scope and
Yeah.
some really, really wild things.
Yeah. So I guess it's to me, I guess it's like, what is your pain point? To me, specificity is 90% of the time when I'm
We
pulling
have
out my
2
hair.
minutes. Let's take a look
Okay.
at one last hot
One
take.
quick one. You probably
Yeah.
have some stuff to do. I have some students that are waiting for me at 1:00, but
Okay, hold on. Let me get a full screen here.
if they're not joining
Edouard.
this, then they then they can wait.
No, this one's trash. We're gonna find a better one.
No, but by better you mean it's going to take longer to unpack.
Why are we always in the teens? CSS logical properties are overkill for most cases.
CSS logical properties. So logical
Inline
property is
start,
like
inline end.
Oh, logical properties. Sorry, like it's just like I'm thinking about logical operators in JavaScript, so ands and ors.
Right.
Well, what is overkill? So, like if you have to support multiple, so the main thing with logical properties, it depends on your, like the whole thing about, and we started seeing this with Flexbox, where instead of flex left or flex right, we started realizing left and right is not a good way to indicate how content should flow, because some languages read from right to left and some languages read from top to bottom, and so forth. So CSS logical properties are a response to that, in terms of you don't define things in terms of top, bottom, left, right, whatever. You define it in terms of flow. So the start of it, the end of something. So it's kind of like Flexbox. It's an extension of the fact that if you change the direction in Flexbox, what justify content and what align items mean changes as well. So sure, I can see how it might be. Okay, this is just more overhead. And it's easier as a Western person and someone who has a language that reads from left to right, now to think about direction in such a vague sense. Yeah, I don't know. Like to me, it's a bit more overhead, but like in terms of just getting in the habit, I think it's a more productive way to think about how your content flows. And I would force myself to get in the habit of thinking that way. Just because I want to be better at CSS, and I want to be that if my product is so successful that we actually launch in China, or we have a Hebrew version or Korean version or whatever, that it's like, yeah, it's as easy as just plug and play and it's going to work. So
the catch is it's not super difficult to do.
yeah.
But what is difficult to do is the migration if you eventually need it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think like once you've done that migration, your opinion will is a lot easier to sway.
I 100% agree. 100% agree. Would I migrate a code base that doesn't use it? Are you thinking about supporting different ways of reading? If not, I'm like, some people would think this is a hot take, but like I'm also cognizant of you need to pick your battles, and there's opportunity cost, and if like supporting like some possibility eventually it's the same thing of like the question about taking a desktop site and making it responsive versus just starting out with responsive. So it's a way of thinking. So if you think that way from the start, like there's no cost to just changing your way of thinking apart from just unlearning habits. If it's an existing thing that's built in a specific paradigm, there's a massive cost, like to taking a site that's just built for desktop and then being like, okay, what's going to happen if the screen now we need to figure out where everything is going to go and whatever. Yeah, and I would say the same for this. And there's an opportunity cost to everything. So in an ideal world, you would always want to make your stuff more accessible, more robust, whatever, for if you potentially have someone that translates your site to Chinese or whatever. But there's opportunity cost, and like if that means you're going to spend less resources on actually improving your page load speed, or you're going to spend less resources making your stuff more accessible, or your color contrasts or whatever, probably not worth it. So
as a company that's looking to expand internationally, it is very much on our roadmap. And I'm glad that the product that I work on at the moment is very small, because I would not like to migrate the product that is not small.
Me neither. I would probably not even advise that. Because changing your paradigm, like that's equivalent to taking an OOP code base and being like, we're going to rewrite this in a functional manner, or taking a functional code base,
taking a functional.
yeah. And well, I don't know. Some people, that's a hot take. That's a hot take. That's a hot take. Like picking a side there and saying that from going from the one to the other is a downgrade. I'm not gonna.
Well, yeah. And
programming for life. Yeah, I need to head out as well. This is great. Thanks so much, Mike.
Yeah, I hope it was fun. I thought it'd be a little bit more entertaining seeing as we're nearing year end.
Yes.
And yeah, good to be here. Good catching up.
Yes. And there's still some left, so you can probably groom that backlog a bit. We can tackle it.
We're not under time pressure. Chris is in South Africa, so nice. I've been doing all the chores and stuff on my own.
Lekker, man. Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah, thanks. I'm also doing a bunch of handiwork. I painted the wall. I see we're matching almost.
You're literally doing anything not to rewrite those logical properties, dude. You are just figuring out other work to do now.
Oh, we didn't even get to the Tailwind ones that are juicy.
Yeah. All right. But that's the entire session. All right, guys. Yeah. Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks everyone that asked questions. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, Mandisa. And hopefully we'll see you guys next month again. All right. Cheers. Take care, everyone.